Welcome back, Daily Fab Gamers. I'm Lupinefiasco. This is Daily Fab Gameplay, and I owe all of you a Pro Tour London tournament report. I'm going to do it a little bit differently this time than I usually do. Pro Tour London was a 3-day event, at least for me, playing in Pro Tour Day 1, then the Callings Day 1 and 2. That's 18 games of Classic Constructed, plus 3 games of Draft that I'll touch on briefly. It's a lot of game recaps. I know that not everyone cares about those, and I even did them a little differently this time around, using a pad and paper to record my thoughts and observations rather than taking 2 or 3 minute videos on my phone after the games. So how I'm going to structure this video is I'm going to start with my reflections, observations generally on the event and my prep for it. Then I will get into the actual game recaps, reading out of my Codex journal. So if you do care about those game recaps, stick around for that, but I think these general thoughts and observations are going to be a little more useful for everyone, which is why I am going to start with them. Very quick summary of the event. I went 4-4 in the Pro Tour, 3-2 in Classic Constructed, and then 1-2 in Draft. Going into the Calling Day 1, running it back with Aurora, I went 7-2 on Day 1, and then 1-3 drop on Day 2, ending with an overall Classic Constructed record of 11-7 for the weekend, which translates to roughly a 61% win rate with Aurora. Overall, I felt a little disappointed in my performance. I was hoping to at least Day 2, the Pro Tour, even if I didn't end up playing in it. And I was really hoping to cash the Calling. My goal for now, my next item on my to-do list, is win a Pro Tour invitation, which would have been achieved by either top 8ing the PT or the Calling. So didn't quite make it that far, but I'm very excited and impressed overall with my progress in these big events, especially considering that my last one was Calling Portland. I felt like leaving Calling Portland, I had no idea what I was doing wrong. I knew that I didn't perform well on Day 2 of the Calling, but I didn't know how to improve. And coming away from Pro Tour London, I feel like I learned a lot over the last few months. I've improved a lot, and I have ideas of how to improve for my next big Tier 3 event, which is going to be US Nationals in June. The biggest takeaways are that my practice has improved, moving away from Talishar randoms and a few NorCal locals here and there to pretty much exclusively practicing with Team Metal Fab tokens. I'm not going to give away any trade secrets on the sort of practice that we did, but just consistently playing against very skilled players and being backseated by very skilled players is a lot more useful than going it alone, or trying to come up with reflections by myself after losing games against my locals. Where I want to take my practice in the future is adding those NorCal locals, or even just friends from around the world, back into the training regimen. So Team Metal Fab tokens identified very quickly that New, Enigma, and Florian, plus Aurora, were going to be the big meta threats for Pro Tour London, and for the most part we were right, which meant that I was really practiced against those 3 matchups, New, Florian, Enigma. I was the only one on the team practicing Aurora, so my practice into her was a little half-hearted, but I really didn't get any reps against other heroes, which then explains why I might have dropped some games against heroes like Vynnset, Dorinthea, and Prism, heroes that I could have anticipated were going to be at least somewhat represented in London because of how they prey on Auroras, and I could have gotten practice against those heroes. I did get some last-minute reps against Vynnset and then dropped a game against Peter Bedenzic's Vynnset. I could have gotten reps against Dorinthea, chose not to, and then dropped a game against Dorinthea after losing the race against her. I thought that I had a decent idea on how to play against Prism, and then ended up getting blown out several times by a Prism who just didn't quite play the way that I expected her to. So where my practice really improved from Calling Portland, I think I scaled back too much on going out on my own and searching out these Dark Horse heroes and getting at least a few games against them, even just to know what I'm supposed to be doing in those matchups, and that really punished me. Something that I did leading up to the event was even just scout out what other players were doing in the hotel lobby leading up to the event. A few days before the event, my testing group and I just went over to the DoubleTree, ended up getting some draft practice and scouting out what other teams were doing, specifically with Aurora for Classic Constructed. And I was a little nervous implementing some of this information, so we saw a number of Aurora players with Zap Clappers and Command and Conquer. Zap Clappers being used for the Aurora Mirror plus other aggressive matchups, and Command and Conquer being used as a popper against Enigma, specifically against Miraging Metamorph and Phantasmaclasm. And I thought, I'm not experienced with these styles of play, it's too late to implement these, but I ended up doing it anyway. It was a last-minute call saying that cards like Vaporize Shock just weren't good enough, and I can replace those with tech for Prism and Enigma and maybe support those matchups, and maybe I can add Zap Clappers and improve my aggro matchups. One of my teammates was really reinforcing that Zap Clappers felt great against his Arachne Slip Through the Cracks and Marionette, and that he thought that I should implement those strategies, and I ended up doing it last minute, and they really paid off. The Zap Clappers was great in at least one of my Aurora mirrors. Command and Conquer ended up being a big blowout against an Enigma and got me some points against one of the Prisms that I beat. So the speed at which I was able to adapt these strategies and implement them is something that I wasn't expecting for myself. So I'm really proud that I was able to make those last-minute changes and succeed with them. And speaking of last-minute changes, I just told you that I didn't get much practice against Aurora leading up to the event because I was the only one on my team playing the deck, and I wasn't going out and searching out locals who were playing Aurora to get reps into them. So I played 4 Aurora mirrors over the 2 events and ended up winning 3 of them. And the first 2 that I played, I was honestly just outskilled. I didn't know nearly as much about the matchup as my opponents did, and I only really managed to get there by slightly outdrawing my opponents, but more than that, taking the lessons that they were teaching me while they were beating me in the early game and applying them both in the late game and then in future games. I'll get into this in my game recap, but as just an example, my first Aurora opponent was doing a great job of just holding a card in hand to pay for Arcane Barrier if I went for the Channel Lightning Valley Sigil of Suffering play. They were always holding one card, and maybe it would go in the arsenal, or maybe it was a yellow that would get pitched at the end of the chain to play, to attack with Starfall, or pitch into Grasp of the Arknight, but they were always just holding a card while they waited for their Spring Tunic to come online, and that wasn't something that I really anticipated needing to do. It makes sense when you stop and think about it, but I didn't have reps in the mirror. And I was just so used to blowing out my opponents with the Sigil CLV play that I didn't consider what Auroras were going to do to counter it. So I ended up having to really internalize this very quickly in that first game, and then in the second game, knew from turn 0 that's how I was going to approach the matchup. And the second game taught me play Spring Tunic all the time. I thought Dyadic Carapace would be the line if you're going second, because you're already at a slight advantage, having won the die roll and getting to present the first turn of real damage. We get to block out Channel Lightning Valley, we get to block out Burn Up Shock, but the difference in how you get to sequence your turn when you have Spring Tunic online compared to when you don't is so monumentally different. Having to say, hold your Skyward Serenade to pitch into AB, rather than starting with it and maybe getting able to work a Starfall into your turn earlier and maybe present a draw from Channel Lightning Valley. It's just such a huge difference that the lesson I learned there was always play Spring Tunic and Lightning Greaves first or second. So I was really proud that I was able to adapt these lessons on the fly and take them with me into the later half of the game I was even in, much less the next game. I'm generally not a very quick adapter to things. I thrive when I get a lot of practice. So the fact that I was able to just pick up on these lessons and really go with them was very, very impressive to me. I'm very proud of myself for being able to put that together. Those are about the lessons that I learned. To summarize, keep doing what I'm doing as far as practice with my Metal Fab Tokens teammates. Expand on that by also continuing to seek out reps against the heroes that my team isn't playing that I think could be a threat, specifically to Aurora. So your Dorintheas, Vynnsets, Prisms, and just continue to scout ahead of the tournament. Don't be afraid to adapt lessons on the fly. And honestly, if I can keep that up and expand on that, I could have seen myself winning a few of the games that I lost this last weekend. And I think that I'm going to be much more threatening when you all run into me at US Nationals. So, that all being said, those are my big takeaways. Am I proud of how I did results-wise? No, not really. I would have liked to have more than a 61% win rate over the course of the weekend. Really was hoping to day 2 the Pro Tour. Really would have liked to top 8 or at least cash the calling. But as far as my non-objective based goals of just becoming a better player and becoming a better player at a Tier 3 and Tier 4 level, I think that I really did succeed at that. I am consistently proving that I'm good enough to play with the pros, and while I'm not beating them yet, it's a matter of when, not if. So now I'm going to get into the games recap portion of the tournament report here. Like I said, I didn't record any immediate recaps on my phone. I instead recorded them with pad and paper using my Codex journal. I'm going to give you all a more detailed review of the Codex journal sometime next week, but as just a little summary now, this was sent to me ahead of the event. It's a new product specifically for Flesh and Blood players to record their thoughts during and after a game of Flesh and Blood. It's going to prompt you to rate your matchup knowledge, your opinion of your opponent's deck, and most importantly, reflections on the game and the conclusions that you're drawing from the game. I was really excited to use this product over the course of the Pro Tour and the calling, and it was really, really helpful for just guiding some reflection on the games once they were over. I think this is a really nice product for anyone who enjoys the sort of thing that I do here on the channel, just taking observations on wins and losses, reflecting on them, and learning lessons that we can take into our future games. If this is the sort of thing that you want to incorporate into your own play style, I think it's going to help you a lot. It's been helping me a lot. You can use the link in the video description down below to find your Codex journal on the website, and then at checkout you can also use the code Lupine10, that's Lupine 10, to get 10% off your order. I'll get a small kickback from that, which I really appreciate, and I think you will really appreciate this product as well. So I am going to just read straight from my Codex journal regarding each of these matches and then expound on that a little bit if I've had any future takeaways, or maybe there was something that I didn't record in the journal that just really sticks out to me now. So we're going to start with the Pro Tour. This was my round 1. I was playing against Brian, who was on Florian. This was the standard Florian build, and Brian was on AB0, choosing to run Well Grounded and face Purgatory rather than Arcane Barrier in either of those slots. So I won the game. I was at 15 at the time that I won. I think this is a favored matchup for Aurora, at least in my experience. It isn't too favored. I think Aurora is about 55% to win against any given Florian. I did win the die roll here and got to go first, and I think I high rolled a little bit. I drew very well. I saw 3 snatches and 3 Channel Lightning Valleys over the course of the game. The game didn't last very long. Burn Up was very good. I had considered boarding these out because Florian is so tanky. He has very good armor, his deck is full of 3 blocks, he plays a bunch of defense reactions, but I ended up keeping the Burn Ups in, and at least one connected over the course of the game, dealing that 4 points of arcane damage, so that felt really, really good. I did board out Scar for a Scar, into this matchup to make room for Flicker Wisp. I'm glad I did that. I was ahead for most, if not all, of the game, and the scars never would have been active. And I do think my opponent kind of low-rolled in this game. He had the Florian problem, where he decomposed in the wrong order, so saw his Felling of the Crowns before he saw his Rootbound Carapaces. He was always a little short on having the Earth cards to decompose, and so he just never really got off the ground early enough to stop me from doing Aurora things. My conclusion from this game is that I generally felt good about the game and the matchup. The Arc Flicker combo seems a lot less important against Florian than it does against Enigma. Enigma's always kind of just going, and Enigma is always one Manifestations of Mirror Guy plus Command and Conquer turn away from totally ripping tempo away from Aurora, but Florian doesn't really flip the script that easily. His big power lines are going to be Felling of the Crown, which a 2 for 8 is really, really good, but just doesn't have that real power to rip tempo away unless he's chaining them together, and I think Aurora has a lot of agency to stop him from doing that. One thing I did notice from this game is I really, really have to get better at tracking what my opponent is pitching. This is historically a big problem of mine. For whatever reason, I just cannot get myself to remember during a game that I need to be watching what my opponent is pitching. There are practical reasons for this, because not only even trying to track your opponent's pitch stack, but if I'm in a game against Florian, for example, and I'm really focused on counting the number of Command and Conquers and Plow Unders that they've played, so that I know how safe it is for me to arsenal my big combo pieces, then just ignoring what my opponent is pitching is really going to come back to bite me. And in this game, Brian pitched a red at some point to attack with a Reaping Blade. I have no idea what the red was. Maybe it was a Command and Conquer, and that would have been really, really helpful for me to know. But we did win this game. We're 1-0 going into round 2 of the Pro Tour. And here we paired into Volpe with the first Aurora mirror that I played during the Pro Tour and really even during preparation for the Pro Tour. So Volpe was playing what I would call standard Aurora, more or less the same 70 cards that all Aurora players play, with some slight variation on the other 10. He was on AB1. I think this is standard now. The cat's out of the bag on Channel Lightning Valley Sigil of Suffering. It is the most powerful thing that Aurora can do, and especially with Zap Clappers also being a card that many Auroras are experimenting with, you need Lightning Greaves in order to prevent your opponent from just mega outvaluing you over the course of both players' turns. So Aurora Mirror should be about 50% for both players. I think you do want to go second in this matchup if you can. I did have to go first, and I won this game at 2 life. I don't believe any player slow rolled, high rolled. We certainly didn't slow roll each other either. This was a very fast game. So my reflections on this game are that my opponent played around Sigil fantastically. I had to block inefficiently after expecting them to misplay and leave themselves open to that Sigil of Suffering CLV line. It means that I ended up holding a Shelter from the Storm longer than I should have. I should have discarded it to cover some breakpoints on a 4-power attack, and then also only take 1 damage from a Starfall rather than 2 damage. I had a Sigil of Suffering in my arsenal that I was expecting my opponent to walk into, and they never did. So I never got to empty the arsenal of the Sigil and then arsenal the Shelter in its place. I ended up using the Shelter to block a Starfall and ended up taking 1 more point of damage over the course of that turn than I really needed to. That said, the life loss accidentally turned on Scar for a Scar 2 turns later, so, better to be lucky than good, I suppose. The opponent went for a nice shock play with double Channel Lightning Valley to try and come back. I saw my CLVs a little earlier than he did and a little better spaced out. So he went for this risky line to try and come back into the game, playing out a second Channel Lightning Valley, shocking me when I had no cards in hand and Tunic was down to pay for Arcane Barrier, and then managed to present Arc Lightning and some more damage on his next turn. What this meant for me was I got to break my Balance of Justice and draw a card to not only not die, but also crack back for lethal. So, like I said, things just went a little better for me. I outdrew my opponent a little bit, and that made up for the skill difference, but I learned a lot from this game. I should have read them for not misplaying after not Channel Lightning Valleying, and I should have discarded my shelter to preserve life, as I said. I just expected my opponent to walk into the shelter, the Sigil CLV, and they didn't. Playing 0 blues in this matchup felt great. Every card that I draw is a hit. Every card that I draw does something. My Rabbles are always attacking for at least 3 and usually 4. So some of the other players that I was scouting in the hotel lobby were playing blues into the Aurora mirror, and I really just don't like that. And also my conclusion, as I've said, AB1 is the standard, and Aurora players all know that we need that in the mirror. So at this point I'm 2-0 going into PT round 3, feeling great, and that is when Alexander Vor stomped on my dreams of being undefeated day 1. Vor was on Florian. He was playing an OTK, or one turn a kill build, and was on AB1. This was the first time that I've run into OTK Florian since I think week 1 of Rosetta. So he's playing Scepter of Pain, he's got Arcane Lantern for that AB1, and his plan here is to just stack Rune Chants. So create these turns that deal 10 arcane damage at a time that I can't interact with because I'm playing AB0, because I'm not expecting to need to deal with a stack of Rune Chants, and I don't play enough blues to really make preventing the damage worth it. So where I think that regular Florian is slightly favored for Aurora, I think that OTK Florian is unfavored for Aurora. I said that I'm about 40% to win this matchup. I think I could definitely shore that up to maybe 45% with some more reps into that matchup. But like I said, this was the first time I've seen it. So Vor won the game at 8 life. I don't believe that anyone high rolled here. My reflections on the game are that I am unfamiliar with OTK, but I did get a lucky tip about it going into the game from one of my friends that was at the event with me. I boarded out my Sigils of Suffering, which I usually play into Florian, and ran extra blues instead. I was immediately rewarded for this because I drew one of the blues that I had boarded in, which would have been a Sigil of Suffering. I would have arsenaled that Sigil of Suffering, and it would have rotted in my arsenal for 3 turns before eventually getting plow undered. So losing my arsenal for 3 turns is a lot worse than just having a blue that can pay for Starfall plus Aurora activation. I correctly played to the Arc Flicker combo, but just found it a turn too late, and I incorrectly sequenced Arc Lightning and missed 3 damage and another Tunic. This was on my first Arc Lightning turn where I was attempting to play around Face Purgatory. I ended up holding my Tunic to attack with Starfall. The turn ended up being something like Arc Lightning, another attack, Flittering Charge, play Electrostatic Discharge to give the Flittering Charge go again, and then Snatch. And my intention had been to use my Tunic to swing Starfall after playing Electrostatic Discharge. The problem is, Snatch is my only card in hand, Vor is sitting on his Face Purgatory, and so if I attack with Starfall, maybe he takes a huge loss by blocking with Face Purgatory and 2 cards, blocking 7 or 8 on 2, but if he then forces me to discard my last card, not only do I not get to attack with Snatch, but I also don't benefit from my Electrostatic Discharge, which is a huge, huge blowout. So the sequencing there should have been Arc Lightning, attack, Starfall, Flittering Charge. If Vor goes for the Face Purgatory, I can discard Discharge and then Arsenal Snatch. If he doesn't, then I play the Discharge, play the Snatch, get my 3 points of damage on Arc Lightning turn, and it was then another 3 turns before I found an opportunity to use my Tunic. So I just totally wasted an entire Tunic cycle. My takeaways from this game are that I need to better consider sequencing around Face Purgatory. As I said, I lost 3 to 5 points of value. I had the right idea with the Arc Flicker and maybe needed to pressure more to keep cards. This turn in particular, I attack with a Flittering Charge. My hand is Burn Up Shock, Gone in a Flash, and Arc Lightning. I am expecting the turn to be Flittering Charge, discard Shock to give it go again, attack with Gone in a Flash, Arsenal Arc Lightning, and then hope to draw into the Flicker Wisp. Vor responded to the Flittering Charge by blocking for 3 and then discarding Shelter from the Storm. So rather than giving him full value from the Shelter, I instead pitch my Burn Up Shock and Gone in a Flash to activate Aurora, then Arsenal the Arc Lightning. I do immediately draw into Flicker Wisp, and then Vor pitches 2 reds and plays Plow Under to bottom my arsenal. And I asked him after the game, hey, if I attack you with Gone and a Flash there, do you think you block with the Plow Under, considering that you have 2 reds and a yellow in hand? And he said that he didn't know. So it's the sort of thing that maybe I win that game if I go for slightly more damage. It convinces him to block and maybe continue to set up, and then I get to blow him out with Arc Flicker. But at least in the moment, I did not want to try to apply a little pressure, wanted to try to set up, and I got punished for it. OTK is definitely harder for Aurora. I don't know if we can tech for Florian specifically. This did convince me that against Florians, we're just going to board out Sigil of Suffering and board in 3 more blues all of the time. Suffering is really good against standard Florian, who's on AP 0, but blues are fine against standard Florian, and Suffering is really bad against OTK Florian. So let's just hedge on being safer against an unknown Florian. If you know for a fact that your Florian is just standard, try to decompose and aggro you out, then yeah, go for Suffering. But if you don't know what your Florian is doing, I think you bring in the extra blues. My next game was against Robin on Azalea. I would say this is a standard build. In general, I think that Aurora is 50% to win the matchup. A lot of it comes down to die roll, which arrows the Azalea is drawing, how your defense reactions line up to those arrows. I did not think that I got high rolled in this game, but the more that I told people the story of this game, the more that people told me, hey, wow, you got high rolled here. And you know what? Maybe they were onto something. So I lost this game. Robin was at 14 life when the game ended. My reflections are that I forgot that defense reactions can't come from the arsenal when trying to defend against a Remorseless that has been loaded into Azalea's arsenal face up. And that did sort of put a ribbon on this game that was already going very poorly for me, but let me just explain what happened on the 6 turns that this game lasted. Robin wins the die roll, goes first, opens with Knock the Death Whistle, finds Endless Arrow, pumps it up to 10, sends 10 Dominate with Inertia, gets the Endless Arrow back, arsenals it. Turn 2 attacks with Remorseless for 14 with Dominate. Turn 3 blocks out my Channel Lightning Valley turn. Turn 4 attacks with Hamstring Shot for 14 and Dominate. Turn 5 blocks out my Burn Up Shock turn and kills me on turn 6. I am at 4 life. Robin attacks with Remorseless for 5, I block for 5, and Robin plays 2 Rain Razors from hand. This was just an incredible blowout. I think I could play this game 100 times, and I would lose it every single time. We did have an interesting judge call on that last turn where I attempt to play Sigil of Suffering to block the Remorseless. As I said, you cannot do that. Remorseless says that if it is loaded into an arsenal face up, it cannot be defended by defense reactions played from arsenal. So Robin attacks with Remorseless, I block for 5, it gets double Rain Razored, I play Sigil of Suffering, Robin lets it go through, takes 1 point of damage, I trigger Channel Lightning Valley and draw a card, Robin plays Codex of Frailty, and as I am in the process of deciding what I'm going to discard, Robin remembers, hey, you can't play Sigil of Suffering. So we end up calling a judge, the judge calls another judge. This judge call goes for a few minutes and looks like it's going to go for many minutes more as we try to figure out how to rectify all of this information that has been revealed that shouldn't have been based on an illegal play from 3 turn actions ago. And Robin and I are just looking at each other like, well, I'm dead if I can't play Sigil of Suffering, so I just concede the game, and the judges all breathe a sigh of relief. My conclusions here are that this is a 50-50 matchup where I need to win the die roll or high roll, and I did neither of those things, and I also need reps into this matchup to tune the sideboard and game plan. I brought in Lightning Greaves and felt like maybe Snapdragons would have been a little better at the same time. If you bring 2 block head, chest, arms, and 1 block legs, then between those 7 pieces of armor, a 3 block from hand, and a D-react from arsenal, you can, in theory, block Red in the Ledger for 14 with Dominate and still have 3 cards to crack back with. So, I don't know, I gotta figure this matchup out. I will say this was a game where I kind of needed to decide if it's worth it to win that way. This was something that came up a few times when we were all talking about a potential slow play scandal back in Calling Memphis that enabled a Syndra to make it to top 8 that maybe shouldn't have if that Syndra had been properly punished by taking damage from a pummel. And I had seen this comment at least once online, is that really the way you want to win the game? And that's something that I got to thinking about here. Robin hit me with this 14 power dominated Remorseless on turn 2, and for every one of my actions that I played on the following turn, I waited for Robin to remind me that I would lose 1 life from the Remorseless effect. And at the time I thought, well, sure, because that's how the game works. That's the rules of the game. Your opponent needs to remind you of your detrimental triggers. But let's be honest, if the only reason that you're waiting for your opponent to remind you of a trigger that you remember, which is why you know that you can wait for them to remind you, is because you're angle shooting. You're trying to make sure that they forget the trigger and then you will not remind them of the trigger. Is this allowed by the rules? Yeah. Is it something that someone who is there with an attitude of good sportsmanship and competitive spirit should do? Of course not. No. So that was just something that I had to learn about myself and reflect on and decide, you know what? This isn't who I want to be. I don't want to be someone that tries to angle shoot by encouraging my opponents to miss their triggers. Of course, I'm going to miss triggers sometimes, and my opponent is going to have to remind me, hey, you should have taken the damage, or hey, you need to discard the Codex of Frailty, or so and so on. But if I can remember them myself, let's be a stand-up guy. Let's actually just, hey, here's Ravenous Rabble for 4, and I'll lose 1 point of life to the Remorseless effect. So I'm 2-2 going into the last round of Swiss. I played this game against Joel, who's playing Zen. I do believe that this was the standard build of Zen. I think that Aurora is slightly favored into Zen. I say that I'm 55% to win the matchup. I think that's based on boarding out Arc Lightning, which is something I learned from Putting Tam's sideboard guide. I don't know how many other Auroras are on this plan, but it's been working out really well for me. This game was a real nail-biter. Went down to 1-1. I won the game at 1 life. Exude Confidence was very good, but I did not maximize the obvious value. So this game should have ended much earlier than it did. I had this big Exude turn. My opponent is obviously holding multiple cards that he cannot defend with. It ended up being a Wax Off and a Preserved Tradition, so a defense reaction and a Chi, neither of which can be played because he blocked Exude Confidence with a 1-power attack. So what I didn't see was how to maximize the damage of this turn. I believe the line was Exude Confidence for 4 go again, into Second Strike, into pitching Arcanic Shockwave to attack with Starfall for 2, into breaking the chain, playing Skyward Serenade, finding Skizzik, attacking with Skizzik for 4 go again, and then ending the turn on Snatch. And because I broke the chain to play the Skyward Serenade, that let my opponent defend the Arcanic Shockwave with, or defend the Skizzik with Wax Off, play Preserved Tradition, Transcend, get the Chi, be able to break the Chi to make a Zen State with 12-Petal Kasaya, and then block my Snatch with a Pouncing Chi from hand, prevent the 1 point of damage, and then we just go into this massive slog where he's trying to kill me from 5, and I'm trying to find any of my 2 remaining burn-up shocks or my 1 remaining Sigil of Suffering to just shoot him for 1. And this took like 7 turns for me to do. I won the game, but there were multiple turns where I was just barely 1 point away from dying, and I'm like pitching Lightning's Press to attack with a Starfall for 1, to get 1 card away from him to just buy time. It was a mess. So while I did get 2 more points of damage from pitching Shockwave to attack with Starfall, then playing Skizzik Snatch, the line actually should have been pitch the Serenade, make an Embodiment of Lightning, attack with Arcanic Shockwave for 4 go again, and then play Snatch. And what that does is, while it does 2 less damage, it means that my opponent cannot play either of the 2 cards in his hand and cannot make the Zen State. So where he ended up blocking, 2, 3, 4, 7 between Wax Off, a 3 block in hand, and 2 little pings from the Zen State, he would have only been able to block with 5 between Pouncing Chi and 12 Petal Kasaya, which is what he ended up blocking with after making the Chi. So I deal less damage, or I threaten less damage, but I deal more damage, and I believe my Snatch connects, draws me a card, and now my opponent's hand is Wax Off and Chi, and like, what does he do with that? So I need to play with Exude more. My conclusion, we need to really be thinking, how do I keep the Exude effect going for my entire turn while still maximizing damage? I need to learn my Zap Clapper timing. I did bring Clapper into this matchup. My opponent was on AB0, and I think I just didn't use the Clappers well. I don't remember if I either missed the Arcane or if I just missed the Channel Lightning Valley trigger that I could have gotten later if I had just waited. Ended up blocking with Clappers for not lethal damage, and that came back to bite me. And then here I have written Tunic. I do not know what that means. Maybe I brought Carapace into this matchup because I went second, and I think that I should have just been on Tunic all the time. Probably makes sense. Zen just doesn't go very fast. So at this point, that's the end of my Classic Constructed rounds. I was 3-2 going into the draft. As I said, I won 2 the draft. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. For one thing, I don't like this draft format very much, and the less time I spend needing to talk about it, the better. I will put up my draft deck. I ended up being Syndra. I was one of 3 Syndras. This was a weird draft because based on my seat, I should have been drafting Fang. The player to my immediate right started by drafting Fang. Picks 1, 2, and 3 were all Warrior common, so of course I'm thinking, well, Warrior's closed. He ended up pivoting to Arachne, which is where I should have started playing Fang, but there were so many good ninja cards in pack 1 that were going around as late as picks 4, 5, 6 when I would have started noticing that Fang commons are still in the pack, that I just stuck the line and ended up being one of 3 Syndras, which is not where you want to be in this format. Syndra really benefits from being a 1 or 2 of, and as soon as you start trending up into 3, everyone's decks get a little worse. You can see that I'm playing 17 reds here, where I would really like to be playing 20. But even then, I could not have drawn worse in my games if I tried. I was drawing hands of 4 reds, into 4 blues, into 4 reds. Like, I was not meant to win these games, regardless of how good or bad my deck was. So I don't feel too bad. I had my deck reviewed by one of my teammates who 3-0'd both drafts with Syndra. He agreed that the deck was not great, but not as bad as going 1 and 2 would indicate that it was. So it is what it is. During deck validation, I confirmed that Alan Lau's draft pool was correct, and he told me that he watches every episode of Daily Fab Gameplay. So, you know what? Blue pitches out there watching my content. That's a win for me. Hi, Alan. So thus ends my Pro Tour experience. 4-4, considering that I was 3-4 at the end of my U.S. Nationals experience last year. It's a step up. I'll take it. Hoping to improve that for U.S. Nats this year. Let's talk about Calling London. This was a 9-round Swiss event, which is insane. I think we had 900 players register. This is like Battlehearth level. This is like, I have had pro quests that ended before 9 rounds, and then we had 5 rounds the next day. So this is going to be a bit of a slog. Bear with me. Round 1, I played against Steven, who was on a standard Florian build. He was running AB1. Again, I think I'm 55% to beat Florian. I won this game at 15 life. I arsenaled a Gone in a Flash turn 0. I should have arsenaled a Snatch. The turn was just play Discharge, pitch 2 reds, make an embodiment pass. I think the line I saw was, well, if I draw Electrostatic Discharge, I can combo with Gone in a Flash. And the line I should have seen was, Snatch is good and I want to draw a card. I had very impactful Exude Confidences. My best one was Exude Go Again into pitch Serenade for embodiment, then play Skizzic from hand, then play another Exude Confidence, and then activate Aurora, so that was sick. We did learn something from our last game of like, hey, how do we maximize Exude value? I didn't write any conclusions here. I think I was off to do something else, but standard Florian game didn't change my opinion of the matchup. I think we are just favored into Florian and are hoping that they don't do good things and instead have Florian problems with ordering and draw variants. Round 2, I played against Mark, who was also on Florian. This was a standard build. I won this game at 7 life. This Florian did do Florian things well. He decomposed early and in the right order. I never drew the arc flicker combo when I was setting up for it, but I should have just played for tempo instead. That said, he saw 3 plow unders and 2 CNCs by the time I was at 20 life. And at that point, well, trying to set up arc flicker is really good because your opponent just can't mess with your arsenal anymore. So it's hard to say if I played it right or not. I did learn that I just got to do the thing, but better than I did it here. Going first in this matchup is correct. I did get a slow play warning in this game, which is not something that I've done before. It wasn't intentional. There were 25 minutes left on the clock when this call was made, and both my opponent and the judge were very apologetic at the end of the game. The situation is that Mark attacks with Erase Face. I have enough, I think I was at 13 maybe. I can definitely take the hit, and I'm trying to figure out, can I afford to take the on-hit effect? Do I need my hand to be lightning cards? And I believe the hand was something like Burn Up Shock in Arsenal, Burn Up Shock in hand, Gone in a Flash, Current Funnel, and like Exude Confidence maybe. And I'm trying to figure out how can I get this Burn Up Shock to connect while also maximizing the value of Gone in a Flash. And the line I ended up coming to was get hit by Erase Face, play Burn Up Shock from Arsenal, play Current Funnel, which gets Go again because the last action card I played was Lightning, play Gone in a Flash for 4 Go again from the Channel Lightning Valley, from the Current Funnel, play Shock from hand to deal 1 point of damage, pick up Gone in a Flash, play Exude Confidence, use my Snapdragons to give it Go again, and then play Gone in a Flash. So overall, threatening 14 points of physical damage, 2 points from the 2 shocks, and then 4 from the burn-up. And of course, anyone who plays Aurora a lot can identify where this was a bad play right at the start, because if I get hit by the Erase Face, Burn-Up Shock is not a lightning card, and Current Funnel not only will not get Go again, but will not give Go again. And so I put Grasp of the Arknight in front of the Erase Face. I'm all set to say, no blocks. I've thought about this turn for 2 minutes, and then I say, hey, wait a minute, that's wrong. And so now I have to tank again. And at this point, the judge gives me, 30 seconds, 60 seconds to identify a new play, and then hits me with a slow play warning. After the game, the judge, explains how slow play work. I have 1 infraction, I get another infraction, then I get 2 warnings, and at the end of that, I get an IP2. He says, I know you're not trying to slow play. I watched you look at the clock. I know you weren't trying to stall out the game to go for a draw. I just got to do it. And as I said, we've got Cinders out here who are dodging pummels based on potential slow play, so I'm not going to hold it against him. It was just interesting. Like, hey, I'm glad that I saw the line, that I didn't just walk into this misplay and then have to scramble to figure out how my turn makes sense. But, maybe do that a little faster. So I'm 2-0 in the calling, pairing into round 3 against Karanjit, who's playing -IO. I think this was a standard build. I would say that Aurora is about 50% to win the matchup. It's your typical aggro mirror, who won the die roll, who drew their better cards first. And I did lose the die roll. I had to go second. I won this game at 14 life, and I do think that I high rolled, but not in the traditional sense of an aggro deck. So where I believe I high rolled is that my defense reaction showed up perfectly for blocking boom grenades. I also drew these terrible offensive hands where all 4 cards blocked for 3. So they don't have Go again, but they do block incoming damage. And Karanjit was very good at finding boom grenades. He had early boom grenades from hand, which is a little unfortunate, but still threatens damage. I believe he flipped 1 from the top of his deck. He played 2 Spark of Geniuses, both of which found red boom grenade, and meanwhile I'm blocking 3. I've got the Sigil of Suffering to block for 4. I have Shelter to block for 4. They really just lined up exactly the way that they needed to. Karanjit broke Achilles Accelerator on a key turn to send play a red boom grenade, 3 damage, 3 damage, 3 damage, maximum velocity. But he also did a line where he plays Spark, finds Cerebellum Processor, draws a card, and that's why he has to break Achilles, in order to get that action point back so that he can boost and then max V. I'm able to break Balance of Justice, which gives me just enough juice to put 10 points of block in front of the maximum velocity to not die, and then send a little bit of damage back. But at this point, Karenjit has no Arcane Barrier anymore. And so I get to put the game away with double Arc Lightning, and my opponent cannot block, or cannot pitch to prevent the arcane damage, and he died with 2 items in hand. So I don't think it was a bad play for him. I think it was the exact right play. It's just that my defenses lined up perfectly the way that they needed to. So my conclusion here is that I do have to vary between aggression and mid-range based on my hand and turn. I had thought going into London that we can just blind try to fatigue -IO, and you just can't. Even if you board out all of your instants, Aurora has too many 2-blocks in order to effectively block every boom grenade. This is sort of like the Dorinthea matchup where you need to be flexible based on whether you're seeing attacking hands or blocking hands. And while my hands did line up well for blocking and I got the opportunity to do it, I also need to be able to send damage and be comfortable taking damage when the hand lines up to be aggressive. I think that Clappers might have been bad in this matchup. I did run it. I don't believe I got Channel Lightning value from it. I think I just dealt 1 point of Arcane. Grasp might have been better just because it offers another point of block, and being able to cover that boom grenade can be very impactful. So this is a matchup that I do need to practice more. I think I got pretty lucky in winning this one, but I did identify -IO as a potential problem for Aurora. Going into round 4, I play against Marciej. He is on Aurora. This is my second Aurora mirror of the weekend. He's on a standard build. I went second here. I won the game at 6 life. This is where I learned that Tunic is better than Carapace at all times. As soon as I present my equipment, I think, that's probably wrong, and then immediately realize that I am having difficulty being flexible with my turn cycles because I always need to hold 1 card to pitch to AB1. I held a Shelter rather than pitching to Sigil, and lost value on a Channel Lightning Valley draw. This was at a time when I was trying to end the game. I don't remember, why did I write this? My opponent plays Sigil of Suffering, does not have Channel Lightning Valley on the board, and I just took 1 point of damage, said I'd rather hold this Shelter from the Storm, and then try to arsenal it at the end of the turn. The problem is I had Channel Lightning Valley. So I'm attacking with Ravenous Rabble for 4 with Go again, which I believe revealed the Ravenous Rabble. If I pitch the Shelter in order to prevent the point of Arcane, my Rabble gets over the top of defense, I draw the Rabble, and then I'm able to present 4 more damage this turn. So holding the Shelter was a good value play, but I could have just ended the game on the spot, or at least gotten more value from my Channel Lightning Valley. So holding the Shelter there was just bad. I should have quote-unquote lost value on the Shelter to gain value on offense, and so that was a mistake. Which is why my conclusion from this is that I need to think about the implications of not pitching to Arcane Barrier and consequently not drawing. Play Tunic always, and Balance of Justice is good. I did not get to break mine, but my opponent got to break his, and that was potentially very bad for me. I am 4-0 at the calling, going into round 5 against Roman, who is also on Aurora. This was an instant heavy build. We talked about it afterwards, and he said that he always presents Lightning Greaves, unless he's playing against Assassin, where he presents Snapdragon Scalers. So he did have that AB1, but he was also playing cards like Vaporized Shock and Sigil of Solace in order to try to combo off with Gone in a Flash. I got to go second this game. I won the game at 2 life. I don't believe that anyone high-rolled. I did write down that Vaporize fucked, because it did. So I had talked with Ellie Bird in the Doubletree lobby ahead of the PT about Vaporized Shock, and if she thought it was good mirror attack because you get to destroy Channel Lightning Valley regardless of how much arcane damage your opponent takes. Vaporize says that you destroy an aura permanent with cost equal or less than the amount of arcane damage you dealt. If you do 0 arcane damage, you can destroy something equal to 0, which would be Channel Lightning Valley. Ellie's opinion is that if I am vaporizing a Channel Lightning Valley then whoever played the CLV already gets value. So if I vaporize Ellie's CLV, she gets her card back, quote unquote, because I am losing a card, and then I am down a card because I played Vaporize Shock, which I thought made a lot of sense. I got Vaporize. Here, Vaporize got 3 points of value because I played CLV defensively in order to then try to benefit from Sigil of Suffering, thinking my opponent is either going to take the damage and let me draw a card or pitch the last card in his hand in order to pay Arcane Barrier. He played Vaporize Shock, destroys my CLV. Great, I quote-unquote got my card back. On my turn, I play Arc Lightning, and my opponent does not pitch to it. So that would have been 2 cards that I get from CLV. And on the turn following, I draw into Sigil of Suffering, which would have been the 3rd card that I get from my Channel Lightning. So Vaporize was really good here. I'm not convinced that we need it in the mirror, but I do think it's better than I was giving it credit for. Roman's hands converted better than mine. That said, I got to go second. I think drew a little bit better, and I did well keeping track of known cards and playing around them. So I'm talking about cards revealed from Ravenous Rabble or cards that Roman fused with. I just did a good job of keeping track of these over 2 or 3 turns. The conclusion here is that Tunic is confirmed the GOAT first or second. I should have held a Shelter for Snatch and anticipate the 4-power finisher. That means that my opponent's turn, it was something like Ravenous Rabble into Flittering Charge, which then got go again from a Sigil of Solace into Snatch. I used my Shelter from the Storm on the Flittering Charge, thinking that I didn't want to take an intellect penalty or have to block subpar on whatever the finisher was going to be, and then it was a Snatch. And it's like, well, I should always anticipate that it's going to be a Snatch, or at least that my opponent with 2 cards in hand is going to play something with 4 power, because that's what Aurora does. We did win the game, at least. We're 5-0 going into round 6, which was against Botond on Prism. This is my first Prism of the weekend. This was a standard build. I think that Aurora is, or at least I thought that Aurora is 50% to win this matchup, based on who goes first or second, who draws what when, and I do believe I was wrong on this. So I won the die roll and went second. I think I lost the die roll and went second. I do think that going second in this matchup is correct. Botond was at 2 when he won. I don't believe that anyone high rolled. My reflections on this game is that everything was awkward. I was always 1 off of what I needed. 1 card, 1 block, 1 power. For example, I drew Command and Conquer in order to block a Herald of Triumph. So, as I said in my deck tech yesterday, CNC cannot block Herald of Triumph compared to something like Ninth Blade of the Blood Oath, Battlefield Bastion, Blanche, whatever you might want to play in Aurora. I did something with a Lightning Press, or I IP'd with a Lightning Press. My hand was something like Exude Confidence, Lightning Press, and I had a defense reaction in Arsenal, and I was unable to present lethal damage with both of the presses, so I held one in order to be able to pop a Herald on a future turn, and I do think that had to have just been wrong. But I was already so far behind in this game that I thought it was my only out, and maybe I was just supposed to push 3 more damage and then rely on my deck to give me the cards I needed to defend. This was my first game playing against Prism without Sink Below, and I realized that Sink Below is just really good against her. Sigil of Suffering has the problem where not only does Prism often float a resource, especially if she leads with something like a War Tune Herald, but she just has Angels. She has Spectral Shields. She has damage prevention just kind of hanging around, and Sigil of Suffering is very unlikely to ever block for 4, whereas Shelter from the Storm and Sink always just block for 4. So if our plan in this game is to block the first Herald with 2 block armor and a 4 block from hand, which it should be, and then return fire with 3 cards, Sigil of Suffering just doesn't really work well for that. My conclusions here is that I need better Prism's reps for sure, as the matchup felt very bad. I do think that I drew the wrong half of the deck in the wrong order, and that definitely could be variance. It's hard to say. 5-1 going into round 7. This was against Konstantinos on Enigma. Weirdly, my first Enigma game of the weekend, considering that she was the 2nd most represented deck. This was a standard Enigma build. I feel incredibly prepared for this matchup. I feel favored in the matchup. I got to go second. I won the game at 14. I don't believe anyone high rolled here. Although Constantinos did low roll when I had my final pop-off turn of the game, including starting with Embodiment, playing Electrostatic Discharge, playing Exude Confidence for 7 go again, followed by a few attacks, and Channel Lightning Valley is out. My opponent draws 4 chi, which was very tragic. This was the fabled Don't Combo, Just Kill Aurora Tempo game, where even from turn 1, my hand was something like 3 4-power attacks without go again and an Arc Lightning, and it's like, well, I could play Flittering Charge, pitch 2 reds to make an Embodiment, and Arsenal Arc Lightning, or I could play Arc Lightning, do 4 points of damage, pitch to Sword, and then Snatch, and that's just better than what the other line would have been. So I never tried to set up the Arc Flicker, I just hit Enigma really hard until she died, and that's what ended up happening. CNC was impactful. I managed to get Constantinos' Spring Tunic. This is because I recognized I had an Electromagnetic Somersault in my arsenal. Constantinos attacks with Command and Conquer. My hand is like Current Funnel, Entwine Lightning, Command and Conquer, Electrostatic Discharge. And I think, well, the obvious block here is CNC, Current Funnel, block for 6, play Somersault, get them back. I didn't lose any life, we're so good at this game. And then I realized, why would an Enigma expect Aurora to be playing Command and Conquer? What if I didn't do that? What if I blocked with Current Funnel and Entwine Lightning, cover for 5, play Electromagnetic Somersault in response to the Command and Conquer trigger, get them both back, play Discharge, play Entwine, fuse with Current Funnel, attack with Starfall, attack with Command and Conquer, which is exactly what I did. Constantinos was not expecting that line and then had to give me Spring Tunic in order to block the CNC. And then he drew 4 chi and died. So I arsenaled Snatch when I suspected the equipment block. I thought that was a pretty heads-up line, and I got to get value from that Snatch later. Felt good to recognize when to pivot plans. Thank you, testing. I needed to think through Serenade more, as I ended up grabbing my Skizik and then realized later that E-Strike for 6 go again would have saved snaps and threatened Channel Lightning Valley on this particular turn. I thought, well, I don't want to E-Strike for 6 because my opponent could have 2/3 blocks in hand, and he ended up blocking for 3 with Miraging Metamorph and then using his Quick Dodge Flexors. So I should have just set the E-Strike for 6 instead of trying to send it for 5 and then line it up with Skizik. So we have me at 6-1 here, going into round 8. This was against Christos on another Prism. I would say this was the standard Prism build, although he did run Arclight Sentinel into me, which I don't believe Botond did. Here we have me saying that Prism is a 45% matchup. I think that's right. I think that more experienced Prisms are a lot harder for Aurora to deal with, especially if she is not on the correct plan to deal with that, being 6 or more defense reactions or super poppers in the form of Ninth Blade or even Battlefront Bastion. That said, I did win this game at 39 life. I lost the die roll, but did go second. I do think that I high rolled here based on this turn 0 play. Christos' opening turn was pitch yellow, 7-power Herald, pitch yellow, 7-power Herald. I block the first Herald with a 3-block and 2 2-blocks from hand. The last card in my hand is Enlighten Strike. He sends red Herald of Protection. I say, I could block for 3, let you hit me for 4, get Figment of Erudition from your deck, make a Ponder token, draw a card, arsenal it, have a 5-card hand for your next turn. Or I could block with E-Strike, Dyadic Carapace, and Balance of Justice. You don't get a Figment, you don't get an arsenal, and I have 4 cards to attack you with. That's the line I took, and it took him 7 more turns to ever hit me with a Herald. It was wild. So every hand I drew after that was just gas. 2-card 8, 3-card 12, Arsenal Defense Reaction, Arsenal Oppress that lets me pop the next Herald. Christos went for some defensive Prism play, blocking for 6 and then attacking for 7. And it just never worked. I just always had something to do in order to interact with the Heralds. So I committed to that armor block to block up the double Herald. I pressed a Snatch, I pressed a Burn Up Shock over Footsteps. It's just everything that could go right for me, this game did go. So I think we do need to high roll this one, but it is doable with early aggressive blocks to starve soul and get good hand conversion. I don't know for a fact that that is replicable, but it is something that I need to test more. We're 7-1 going into the last game of day 2, which of course was played against Magic the Gathering Professional and new Flesh and Blood convert, Andre Mengucci. This is my son, Cinnamon Bunsworth Cooper. The game against Mengucci was really good. So this was the only Aurora mirror that I lost this weekend. And it was just, if there is any game that I wish that I had on camera that I could record or that I could review a la Daily Fab gameplay, it would be this one. I lost the game. Mengucci was at 2 life. I could have put him to 1 with a shock from hand. Anytime I lose a game and my opponent is at 1, I'm pretty sure there's some way that I could have won the game if I had played just a little bit differently. I do think that I had worse defensive Channel Lightning Valleys than Mengu did, that he got to threaten multiple CLV Sigil of Sufferings. Meanwhile, I drew 2 sigils with a Channel Lightning Valley and an Exude Confidence in hand. So while I could have gotten a draw from the CLV, I would not have been able to guarantee that I get to pitch a lightning card to keep the Channel Lightning Valley around. So I end up blocking with my 2 sigils, attack with Exude Confidence, arsenal my CLV, and I got value from it later, but never as much value as he got from his Channel Lightning Valleys. I also think that I respected Balance of Justice too much. I had a turn where my hand was Arc Lightning, Enlightened Strike, Exude Confidence, Snatch, and the arsenal was Lightning Press, and so the turn could have been play Arc Lightning, play E-Strike, bottom Exude, draw a card, either attack with Forego again or pitch to Starfall, then play Snatch and Lightning Press it. And I didn't want to give Mengu the option to break Balance of Justice because I had drawn 2 cards, so I ended up blocking with the E-Strike, Arc Lightning, Exude, Snatch, Press. I still got good damage and good value, but what it meant was that I did not allow Mengu to break his balance, which meant that on a future turn, I didn't have the option, or I didn't want to commit to the option of playing 2 Channel Lightning Valleys and then playing Arc Lightning, because I didn't want to let him break his balance. So the analogy that one of my teammates told me is this is like not attacking with Command and Conquer because your opponent has Crown of Providence. You want to make them do the thing, because then you get to do the thing later and they cannot interact with it. So if I have Mengu break balance the first time he has the option to, he doesn't have the option to break it the second time, and maybe that's enough to help me win the game. So that was my takeaway from this, was don't overly respect Balance of Justice. But it was really great to get to play against Mengucci here. I know that I was part of his entry into the game with my KO guide, and then he and I have been talking about Aurora quite a lot leading up to the Pro Tour, so if I was ever going to lose to an Aurora, I'm happy it was him. Ending day 1 at 7-2, I was 23rd out of over 900 people. That felt great. What did not feel so good was day 2. First game of day 2 was against Peter Bedenzik on Vynnset. I would say this was a standard Vynnset build. I think Aurora is heavily unfavored in this matchup. I'm saying that we're 40% to win, but maybe that's even too high. I lost the game with Peter at 7. What I will say is this is the only game I played over the weekend where I really felt like I punted. Like, it isn't so much that Peter won the game. He played it very well. He did exactly what Vynnset needs to do, but I think I lost the game because I took a greedy line, kept a blue, didn't pitch to Arcane Barrier, and they got blown out by Succumb to Temptation. This is a matchup where Aurora needs to fatigue Vynnset. It is our only way to beat Vynnset unless we Giga High Roll them. Vynnset's hands block for anywhere from 6 to 8, and then attack for anywhere from 7 to 9 with disruption tied in that we cannot block because it triggers when we lose life in a turn, which includes rune chant damage. So not only are you getting outvalued turn to turn by Vynnset, but she is disrupting you turn to turn where you aren't doing the same to her. So you need to just be blocking. You need to be pitching to AB. You need to be running her out of powerful effects and taking advantage of the fact that she might not have boarded for you to fatigue her because Aurora isn't supposed to do that. So I took a greedy line by keeping a blue to go super wide. Note that my hand without the blue still goes wide. Play Serenade, find Skizzik, attack for 4, go again. If Peter takes the damage, I get to play Second Strike for 4, Second Strike for 4, Gone in a Flash for 4, deal 16. I was up like 15 life this turn. So if I pitch the blue to an incoming Widespread Destruction with 3 Rune Chants, then crown away my arsenal, I just get to present 16 on my turn. Instead, I kept the blue, take the 3 Arcane, Peter plays Succumb to Temptation, takes my Serenade, then with the extra action point, plays Revel in Runeblood, makes 4 Rune Chants, and then plays Widespread Ruin from Banish. So I, by not pitching, turned what would have been a 9-point turn into a 20-point turn, which let Peter turn my 16-point turn into a 4-point turn. It was brutal. I do think I played well outside of that. I did manage to kind of claw my way back into a position where maybe I could have won, but I had just lost too much tempo. So my conclusion here, in all capitals and underlined, is don't get greedy. The plan works. Fatigue Vynnset. Don't get aggro when defense is full value. I do want to chalk this up a little bit to not getting enough practice against Vynnset, which is my own fault. That said, this really was me knowing what I needed to be doing and then just not doing it. So I am 7-3 going into my next round, which was against Mario's Enigma. This is the standard Enigma build. I'm 60% to win. I got to go second. I won at 14. The big moment here was blocking CNC. Oh, this was the CNC block for 5 and then somersault turn. My last Enigma game was just, that's right, just dealing a bunch of damage and then him having 4 cheap. So this was the CNC line, taking 1 to hide information about the Command and Conquer in hand. I hit with the CNC here and ended up taking Phantasmaclasm from Arsenal. I risked not playing a 2x Arc Lightning turn, which would have enabled me to draw from Channel Lightning Valley and present 6 more damage in the turn. Instead, I drew from my CLV at the end of the turn, got to Arsenal, this Arc Lightning from my hand, and then lost that Arc Lightning to Command and Conquer. So this might have been a game where I incorrectly evaluated the tempo of the game and saved my 2x Arc Lightning, when instead I should have just learned my lesson from the previous day, pivoted to full aggro, and just played both Arc Lightnings and not have been afraid to hit hard and fast when the turns lined up. That said, as I said, considering that I now know which game I'm talking about, I am proud of that quote-unquote inefficient block that won the game by taking the Phantasmaclasm. At this point, I am 8-3. I play against Richard's Dorinthea. This was a standard Dory build, playing AV1. I think we're about 50% to win the game. I unfortunately had to go first here, which I think does put us down quite a bit of percentage points to win. I did lose this game with Richard at 3 life. I don't believe either player high rolled. In fact, I think we both low rolled pretty hard, both seeing cards that were not red or blue at times when we wanted to see the opposite. For me, my Ravenous Rabble flipped a yellow. If it had flipped a red, I would have connected with a burn-up shock that would have then won me the game a few turns later. Instead, I did not do that. My Sigil of Suffering CLV combo showed up early, but I didn't have the Lightning card to pitch to keep the Channel Lightning Valley around, so I didn't get full value there. And then I felt like I couldn't keep it, that I just played my Sigils, played the Channel Lightning Valley, took the risk, and maybe that was wrong. Maybe I could have just kept the CLV anyway. I'm not sure. I needed to make him have it, and I might have won. There was a turn down the road where he plays Warrior's Valor, attacked with Dawnblade for 5, has a card in hand, resource floating, and I blocked for 8. If I had blocked for 5 just to stay alive, then my turn is Scar for 4, go again, into E-Strike for 7, which takes 3 cards out of Richard's hand. The card that he kept was a Warrior's Valor. So we talked about it afterwards, and he said, if it's a reaction, you're dead anyway, because now I get to do 2 reactions on my next turn. If it isn't a reaction, then I'm dead, because you get to aggro me out. So just make me have it. And I thought that was a really good piece of advice. It was also a direct reflection of me not getting experience in the Dorinthea matchup before going to London, something that I have already reflected on needing to work on. That said, my hands did trend aggro, and so I think I correctly evaluated that I needed to just race and not try to block out the Dawnblade every turn. and we had to just keep doing the thing. So overall, I think I played the game fairly well, except for not calling his bluff at the end, and that could come down to inexperience. I'm 8-4 going into what ended up being my last round. I had made a deal with myself that if I ever went x5, I would just drop. This is a result of my record at calling Portland, where I entered day 2 with a 5-2 record and ended day 2 with a 6-6 record, which made me feel really bad about myself. So in the interest of saving both elo and sanity, I said that if I went x5, I would drop, and it was Noah Bagelman who put me there. He was on Enigma, and he was playing a Refractor build. So Reality Refractor, which says that his auras all attack for 5 if he pitches 2. This is a slight variation on the Enigma build that relies much more heavily on transcending and playing spectral manifestations. It is not a build that I'm used to, and it is a build that is more favored into Enigma than the typical Enigma build, which is unfavored. So I would say that I'm 45% to win this one. I went first. I lost the game at 2. I don't believe anyone high rolled. What really did it for me here was I have no clue how to play against Refractor and how it is different from the standard Enigma build of playing Cosmo. I made a few miss sequences and needed to tighten up. My conclusions here, with the help of Noah himself, really nice guy, scammed me a bit at the end, but I won't hold it against you, is that I need to not be afraid to lead with Ravenous Rabble. Because it's fine if it misses. So I had a line where I play Lightning Surge from Arsenal for 4 go again, then play Ravenous Rabble, which flips yellow, then play Somersault to bring the Rabble back and attack for 3 again. And Noah's point is I can lead with the Rabble. If it flips the yellow, then I don't Somersault it. I attack with Surge for 4 go again from Arsenal, then Somersault it back and attack for 4 without go again. I had nothing to do with the action point. And if the Rabble does flip red, then I can Somersault that back. My thought had been that I didn't want to reveal too much information to my opponent too early. What that meant is that I also didn't reveal critical information to myself. So this is a outcome where I maybe cut off my own nose to spite my face. And so holding the information just ended up hurting me. And then more information ahead of activating Aurora or playing Somersault is ideal. And finally, my conclusion here is test against Refractor, I guess. This would come down to inefficient practicing, though I don't believe that any of my teammates really identified that Reality Refractor Enigma would be a thing, just as we didn't anticipate that OTK Florian with Scepter of Pain would have been a thing. So I don't know how much I can necessarily do against that. I do know that Noah was scouting ahead of time, identified that I am not playing the Bozo package of Crown of Dominion and Aether Ironweave, which really punishes Refractor Enigma because I can just block pretty heavily until I find my Arc Flicker. Refractor Enigma is not very good at converting full hands because their deck is primarily Spectral Manifestations, which cannot be played in multiples, and Defense Reactions, which can't be played if your opponent is just blocking out every turn. I also learned that Burn Up Shock is good enough in Enigma that I need to just keep it. I had been cutting it earlier in the day because the 1 point of Arcane always gets paid for by Arcane Barrier, and then Enigma plays a bunch of damage prevention and defense reactions, so you never connect with your Burn Up Shock. But where the shock is really good is when your opponent goes down to 1 card in hand, pitches a Chi into Enigma, makes a Spectral Shield, uses Tunic, and then attacks for 6. And you get to just shock the Spectral Shield, prevent 6 points of damage, and then also prevent the 1 point of prevention that they would have gotten on your next turn. Overall, this was a great tournament. I am not thrilled with my outcome. I am thrilled with the lessons I learned, the way that I felt like my preparation paid off, and how I feel like I am going to perform much better at future events. This has been a long video. I covered 18 games of Classic Constructed, a little bit regarding 3 rounds of draft. If you have stuck with me for this long, thank you so much. I really want to thank you for watching this video, for cheering me on. If you met with me at the event, it was great to meet you. I got to give out a set, my fair share of sets of patron tokens. I hope you all enjoy those. Again, this tournament report brought to you by the notes I made in my Codex journal. Really great piece of assistance for anyone who wants to improve their game of Flesh and Blood by doing this sort of daily fab gameplay shtick, but in real life. I got a lot of use out of my Codex journal. I'm going to continue using it for future events. Really, really fantastic. The next event I'll be at is Battle-Hardened Santa Clara this weekend. Following that, we've got 4 more weeks of ProQuest, culminating with U.S. Nationals in Las Vegas just a few weeks after that, with the debut of High Seas. Really looking forward to playing at that. Really looking forward to more Tier 3 and Tier 4 events. My throat's killing me. It's been great to chat with all of you, but I am going to call it for now. I will be back next week with more daily fab gameplay. I'm going to return to form with Aurora gameplay. So until the next time I see you, take care.